Hey Stampers, Kim from stampingandperfection.com. Thanks for joining me today. I want to create a card that, this card I made yesterday was totally inspired by a card I saw Kelly Ladivola make. And she was using the Altenew water brush markers. She was using the new set that just came out, which I don't have yet. But I attempted this yesterday, and I've used this technique before, but I didn't love the way the card came out because I did these splatters and then I let them dry for 24 hours, and then when I went to put the card together they still weren't dry. But so I decided I would do this again with a new twist on it, just to, you know, keep practicing the technique. And to be more careful about letting things dry so, you know, one thing doesn't bleed into another. I'm using the Smiles and Hugs stamp set from Altenew, and I'm also using this Inkadinkado stamp masking paper, and I've had this package forever, and I'm just about at the end of it. I love this stuff. It's like, I'm creating masks. I don't care that it comes out very light. I'm just going to cut these apart, and I'm going to die cut them with the coordinating dies for this set and my Altenew mini die cut machine. They call it the mini blossom machine. I just love this. So I'm just going to create these masks, and I will save these masks in the envelope that I store my die and stamp set in, because I store all my dies and stamp sets together. The dies are stored with the stamp sets that they coordinate with in a nice thick plastic stamp and die storage sleeve. Lots of companies have them. This is, excuse me, this is actually really nice masking paper, and this is the thing I store them in. But this is really nice masking paper, this Inkadinkado paper, and other companies have this also. This happens to be what I have, so that's what I've been using, and this package has lasted forever. It's got a paper on the back, and then it's just a temporary adhesive, so you can just cover up what you want to make. And I just used my stamp positioner so I could just stamp everything all at once and make it easy. So now I usually clean my stamps. That's my Brutus Monroe Squeaky Clean stamp cleaner stuff, and I really love that container. So I'm using Arches watercolor paper. This is 140 pound cold pressed paper. I like the smooth side, and I took a class with May Park at Altenew Academy, and this is the paper that she recommended, and a couple people have actually recommended this as their favorite because they feel like it absorbs the color the nicest, and it allows the water to blend the colors the best. I mostly use Canson because it's inexpensive and I always get it on sale at Michael's, and it's also a brighter white, so I like that about it. But I'm just playing with this to see, because I happen to have it on the shelf after watching one of May's videos, and she said this was her favorite because she thought this was the best. I thought I would try this paper. So I've cut that at 4 by 5 1/4, and I am just, I put a piece of that Post-it removable labeling tape across. I'm just masking off the center part, and I'm going to like ink this up with my Versamark at least 4 times. The texture on watercolor paper makes it so that you really need to stamp it a few times to get a good image. Whether I had been using my black ink or any other color ink, I would have stamped it multiple times. Now I've added some white embossing powder. I'm heating up my Wagner heat tool. I just got this heat tool not too long ago, and I really like this. I cannot believe how powerful this heat tool is. Like, holy cow, it's amazing. So I'm just heating that up, and I was trying to be careful not to get the embossing powder on the sticky part of the tape, because I still want to add some leaves. I really like this. The one thing you do have to be careful of is that this is not meant to you know, as an art masking paper like the Inkadinkado is, and that tape will actually it doesn't soak up the color, so the color kind of sits on top. So it's easy to smear your color if you're not careful. So now that I've got the flowers stamped and embossed, I'm covering them with the masks I created so that I can put the leaves on. And I don't want a ton of the leaves to show, so I'm kind of overlapping them, which is why I'm using the mask. So again, I'm going to go through the stamping process. Pardon the cord from my camera there. Just hanging in the way. Sorry about that. I did not notice that was hanging there. You'd think I would have noticed because I kept whacking it with my arm, but I didn't. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to cover these with white embossing powder, and I'm removing the masks for the flowers, and then I'll put the embossing powder on. And I keep my white embossing powder and my clear embossing powder in a tub, and I emboss so much more now that I do that. It's just so much neater. I am not a tidy crafter, and it's so much neater having it in the tub, although you do introduce static electricity when you do this. So I'm leaving that mask in place there because that mask I want to keep in place because I want to have a white space for my center. So I'm just wiping everything off, and I'm going to trim those sides off because they're sort of making it warp a little. And I do like to move my cardstock around, and I did try to make an effort to push down the color or the edges there because I am watercoloring. I don't want my colors to leak underneath. Now this is the set of the springtime set of Altenew watercolors. There's also a winter set that they came out recently, and they just came out with the tropical set, which I cannot wait to get. I really love Altenew's ink colors. They're just gorgeous. The colors I happen to pull out are all from the spring set. These are the ones that I've used the most, so I'm like comfortable with these colors. So I am going to use the technique that I saw on Kelly Ledevola's video. She started after she heat embossed her image. She just added some water around the edges. At least I think she did. She said she did. She didn't really show that part, but I decided that this works better for me. When May does it, she does not put the water on first. She just puts that line of color, and then she uses a water pen to add water, and hers comes out so pretty too. Kelly's came out beautiful. I have a little trouble with these, getting rid of that harsh line. And one of the things that on Kelly's video, the technique that she used is that she put the water farther away and then sort of moved the water in toward the line that she had created. And I think then the water will do all the work. The problem is that it's very hard to trust that the water is going to do all the work, but you have to trust it. Trust the water. And it's hard. I'm just adding a little more because it's so hard not to fuss because it doesn't happen fast enough. It's not an instant thing, but you'll see that it really does. As I go to the bottom part of this, it really does actually, the color does seep out. I want it to be, the reason I tried this technique was because I do want it to be darker next to the flower and lighter as you go out, because I love the watercolor effect. And that is a Nuvo brush. I got a whole package of these brushes. They were very inexpensive. I'm not in love with these brushes, but they work great when you're learning. So, I think I really wore out my other set of brushes that I got to start with and decided to get some new ones, but these weren't very expensive. But they work fine. They're working fine for what I am trying to do. And I'm not yet a master, so I don't feel like I should be spending a ton of money on my supplies till I start to really master it, and then I might deserve the good stuff. So I'm trying to put the water out and then sort of work the water in so that it sort of encourages the blending. And like this color, by the way, is dusk. It looks super green on the video, at least on my video screen here. It is a blue color. It's almost like a gray blue color. It's not as green as it's looking to me here, but it is really a gorgeous color. Gorgeous, gorgeous. One of my favorites. So I really like that. Now I'm going to attempt to do the flower without having any of it leak underneath that masking tape. I will be impressed with myself if I make that happen. So I'm adding water to the top flower. That's the first one that I did the color around, and by now the color is fairly dry. That dusk color is fairly dry around this flower. So I'm putting down some warm sunshine, which is my very favorite yellow. And I tried to do that at the base of each petal, the bottom part of each petal, and in the center, because I really like yellow in the center flowers. Then I used the rubellite, which is like a reddish pink color. And then I used the Midnight Violet, which I really like. And I chose these three because when I was watching Kelly Ladavola's video, she used three inks, a yellow, a pinkish red, and a purple. Not these ones, I don't think. And now I'm just adding some water in. Like, I try to just dab the colors in. I hope Kelly doesn't watch this because I totally have not. I wasn't paying enough attention. I was so fascinated by what she was doing. I wasn't paying enough attention to everything she was doing. But then I tried to put water at the end of the petals and work my way in and try to like let the water do the work. But it's, again, you've got to trust the water. So I put a little limeade. I love that limeade color. It's like a citrusy green yellow. And then I put some moss toward the end. I love the moss on the leaves. It's one of my favorite colors of Altenew ink pads to use for leaves. And I'm putting a couple dabs of that Lagoon, which came out in the winter set, because it's a bluish green. And I like a touch of blue in my leaves. I just feel like it's just fun. I'm going to start with the leaves on the other side. By now, this has had time to dry. So hopefully I won't have the problem that I had with the card I made yesterday, where the colors really bled together because I did not wait for things to dry, and I watercolored things next to stuff that was still wet, and that caused some bleeding. So I learned my lesson. And boy, that cord is really, I do apologize for that. I didn't even notice that while I was working, which is amazing. It's amazing how much I can tolerate while I work, seriously. So I'm wetting this down. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the yellow to the center, the warm sunshine to the center. Then I'm going to add my rubellite and then the Midnight Violet. Now the reason that I'm putting the rubellite in is because yellow and purple are close together on the color wheel, and when they blend, they actually give you brown. And if you take a color theory class and you have a nice colored wheel, you can see what you can put next to each other and what you can't. So when I add the water to try to get these to blend, I'm trying not to like take the water and just blend them all together myself. I want the water to do the work. It's hard to be the patient though. The hardest thing about watercoloring is being patient. Like if you watch Debbie Hughes watercolor, she fusses and then she'll say, I've got to stop fussing. And she's like, take a watercolor class with her because, oh my goodness, she's the master watercolor person. It's just amazing. And she has so many good tips. And all of these people will tell you they've been doing this for a long time, and they're super comfortable with all the different mediums and everything. I've been doing this for about a year now, and I'm working at getting super comfortable. But I do have to say, I really do enjoy watching other people's watercolor videos. It's amazing. So now I'm going to let that dry. And I decide at this point, this is not a good idea. I'm going to take that jet black again, and I'm going to splatter. But you know what? My card is still wet. This is not permanent ink. This is dye ink. So that is, if it gets on a wet part, is just going to bleed right into my color, which is why I dabbed off a couple of the big drops. Now I'm just cleaning off my brush because it's watercolor, so I just, wet it down. I do not have a sink anywhere near my craft room, so I'm going to stop there and clean up a little bit. So I've given this time to dry, and I've removed that mask in the middle. And one of the things I definitely like to do is to just add a black line. And I actually am impressed with myself that watercolor did not bleed below that tape I had. So I'm pretty happy about that. And this is my favorite ruler, but my son borrowed it for a project, and he was using a craft knife, and the edge of it is pretty sliced up. So I'm going to have to get myself a new one. That's the Tim Holtz. It's got a 0 in the center. It's got a tapered edge. I love this, but it's super chewed up. So sadly, that's not going to work for what I use it for a lot, and it's lining, drawing lines. And I pulled out my Micron pen, but it's too thin. I like a thicker pen. And I'm going to pull out my Altenew artist marker. This is the black, and I'm using the bullet tip because I want a slightly darker line. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but those drops are still a little wet. Those really do stay wet a long time. And I should have hit them with the heat tool. What May did was she hit hers with the heat tool and then let them sit for about 10 minutes, and then she took a piece of like scrap copy paper and just put it down on top and rubbed it across the top. So I am pulling out my heat tool. Now notice I'm not using my Wagner heat gun for this because that is a super powerful embossing tool. This is the Ranger Heat It tool, and the purpose of this is just for things like this, drying paint, so that you don't end up moving the paint all around. Like if you use the Wagner tool and you have a big blob of water or a big blob of ink, it's actually going to move it around. The little Ranger tool is specifically designed for you to dry stuff like this with, so it's perfect for this. It's nice and gentle and doesn't like move the ink around. So now I'm just putting this in my MISTI so I can stamp my sentiment, and I'm using a lot of magnets, and I'm just centering the sentiment in there. And again, I'm going to heat emboss this, but this time I'm going to do it in black because I really want it to stand out, and I do love the shiny black. And again, I'm going to have to use my Versamark 3 or 4 times because this is watercolor paper and it's got a texture. Now, a lot of times when I'm watercoloring and I'm sure that it's super dry, just to get rid of if it's like a little warped or a little bent, or curved really, I will actually take that to my Big Shot and I will just run it through my Big Shot between my plates, the normal plates you'd use to do any die cutting or anything. But I put a piece of copy paper on top, and to prevent anything from transferring from my card front that I've worked so hard on to from my plates to my card front. That's what I mean to say. So you'll notice that I did not use, I'm heat setting this right now, I did not use an embossing buddy. I'm allergic to talc, and I'm allergic to corn products, which is the alternate to talc and powders, and I don't know what's inside those. So I decided to learn to live with some stray embossing powder flakes on my cards, and I'm okay with that. Now I'm going to take some Elizabeth Crafts double-sided tape here, and I'm adding a generous amount to a piece of white craft foam. And I really like this when I watercolor or do any mixed media. I like to use the craft foam or just put a generous amount of double-sided sticky tape on a card front to really like give this make this lay flat so that I can get rid of any curves. And I'm trying to be careful not to touch those ink splots just in case they're not dry. I'm using my Ranger nonstick super size. These are like 9.5-inch scissors. I love these just for this technique. Like, I love them. They're just amazing. and I just made sure there's no water on my craft mat. I'm going to do the same thing to the back and attach it to a card base that is cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This card front, remember, is 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to have at least 1/8 of an inch border all around the outside of this. And so I'll just stick this on. And I could have put it directly on. I'm just trimming off the edges of this because my Fiskars trimmer needs a new blade, and I've just been kind of lazy about putting a new blade in. So I'm trimming the edges so they're nice and even with my tonic, like little mini guillotine. And I apologize for my head in that cord. Like, there's a reason I named my blog Stamping Imperfection, and I do apologize because it's probably driving a perfectionist watching this crazy, having that cord dangle and seeing my head pop in there. Now I'm adding some sequins because I do love sequins on a card. Once I started using them, it was like just addictive to me. These are Pretty Pink Posh, sparkling clear, and this is their mix. And what I like about a mix is I like the variety of sizes. I'm using the Quick Stick from We Are Memory Keepers and the Ranger Multi-Medium Matte Glue. This is my favorite way to add them. I tried tweezers. I have arthritis, so if you have arthritis, this is a great way to add them. And I know there are other tools out there that also work really well. This works really well for me, and this is the tool I have, so this is what I use. I just played with it and practiced enough to get comfortable with it, and I'm happy with this tool, so why bother buying another one? Like, I don't need to try every tool out there. That's what I keep telling myself. I wanted white splatter, so I pulled out my gouache and spritzed it with water, and I pulled out my big number 8 or 10 brush. I'm just going to put some paper over the sentiment part, and I'm trying to get some white splatters on there, which I do, and you can't really see. But honestly, and the card was very dry. When this dried overnight, you couldn't really see the white splatters well enough, so I would add larger ones or use my white spray. And there are the 2 cards I made with this technique. And you can see the one on the right, I was not patient about letting parts dry. I watercolored, though. What not to do is don't watercolor next to something that's still wet, because you can see that the colors really did bleed a lot. What I liked about the one on the right was I got some orange in there between the yellow and the pink, the rubelite color, and I really liked it. I really like having that orange in there. But all in all, I was pretty happy with the way today's card turned out, and I will do this again. Give this video a like and share with your friends. Stop on my blog at stampingimperfection.com and check out the links below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.